Hey everybody!
What's up?
So we are here to talk about Godzilla, Planet of Monsters.
Yeah, this is a Netflix original cell shade anime movie that came out.
Something like that. So
Stop covering your mouth because it sounds bad on the audio.
well, so Netflix has been like reselling their animes very weirdly. This is the first in a trilogy of movies.
Yeah,
I did research on this.
okay, well that's good because I just took it as its own as a movie, and I'm grading
well,
it as such.
It's a first in three. It's a first in a.
People don't need to see the street.
It's a first in a trilogy of movies that's gonna.
I gathered that when it said season 1, episode 1.
Well, it's gonna lead to.
And these are labeled as episodes, but they're like an hour and a half long.
Yeah. It'll be done by the end of this year, from what I read. But it's all going to lead up to them building something they already showed in the first episode. So I guess they're going to rebuild Mecha Godzilla.
I guess I don't know.
I was looking it up. The final one is them in Mecha Godzilla versus Godzilla.
Okay, well,
from what the material.
That'll be interesting then.
Like, so this is like a weird one for me because this means at this point
this anime did a lot of things that I don't like about a lot of anime.
Yeah,
and so I'm just like I'm not real on board with most of this.
Well, this is now now have 3 active Godzilla franchises. Because of this movie.
3.
You have, so Shin Godzilla, that is now...
Okay, so that's the live-action Toho Godzilla they're doing.
And then you have the Monsterverse.
Okay. America's version.
And then you have this one.
And then there's animated Godzilla now. Okay, so yeah, that's 3.
I
didn't know Shin Godzilla series was going to be a series. I thought it was just a one-off that they allowed the guy who made Evangelion to do his own little insane thing with, which... that's a discussion in and of itself. But as
we did a video on.
We did.
We saw that one live.
Yeah, I found out about that director being who he was, and I was like, that explains a lot about the way I feel about this movie.
So, yeah, because of the success of the American one, no, that is an active franchise.
Okay.
Because that, like, the rebirth and Godzilla forming into Godzilla in that one. Because the last Godzilla movie before that one was like final. It was like the end of that particular era of franchise. So
Final Wars kicked ass though.
Yeah, they are now in a new.
But those are discussions for another time.
Yeah.
Right now we're discussing Godzilla
animated universe.
Sure, let's say it's that. Let's go ahead and just kick off with the animation. Normally, I don't like a lot of cell-shaded anime. This was pretty good.
I didn't mind the animation style. I mean, Godzilla kind of irked me a little bit.
He's the biggest drawback for this, in a lot of respects, actually. Yeah, Godzilla doesn't look super great. He looks real blocky, almost like they were trying to parody how... Godzilla looked in the American Godzilla.
Kind of.
That was kind of what I drew out of his visual aspect, and he just kind of looked bad. I really hate to say that, but
also they killed a Godzilla, and it was like baby Godzilla, because then Godzilla really showed up.
Yeah.
This movie is like
you're getting ahead of us right now. We're talking mostly about the animation and how the movie looks.
Yeah.
Which again is kind of a mixed bag for me because I kind of enjoy a lot of the aspects of this.
Yeah.
Like the spaceship design, I thought was pleasantly
it's
compact.
It's when they go to Earth and the creatures start showing up is where it gets weird.
That is kind of where it falls apart for me as well, which mostly goes into the story, though. As far as the overall look, I thought everything looked really good. The spaceship, when you get down into it, kind of looked like a basement more than it did a spaceship.
Yeah.
Which I kind of get what they were going for. It was supposed to be like run down and like half finished because they did this on like borrowed time to get away from Godzilla.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay, I can kind of accept that.
I mean, it's kind of like the spaceship we're getting on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. right now.
Is that actually a spaceship or is that a hunk of Earth that's floating around?
It's like a hunk of, it's like a base.
I don't know. But
that's also a discussion different time.
Yeah.
But
excuse me. I like the spacesuit designs. I thought they looked futuristic-y, but within reach of what we would have technology-wise.
Yeah.
Like you said, the big thing that kind of falls apart is when they get to Earth and the monsters all start appearing, and they all kind of look boring and generic.
So, since we, I guess, gotten the look out of the way, I want to talk about the story.
Okay.
Because, yes, they ran from Earth, but this is...
Well, let's recap for people who may be watching us instead of the show because they're not too sure about it. Just a brief synopsis.
So it's
Godzilla and a whole cadre of monsters appear. You get to see like Anguirus and Rodan in like silhouettes.
I was about to say, yeah.
You never actually get to see them up on screen fighting anything. It's all Godzilla walking around going, "Oh, I'm Godzilla, I'm gonna blow you up." Which is kind of how I think Godzilla should be voiced.
Yeah.
Like in the next movie when he comes out, he talks like, "I'm gonna punch King Kong in the face."
That's not the next Godzilla movie, though.
Well, shut up. But right. Godzilla in this is portrayed as a like a constant natural disaster rather than something that just kind of comes in waves when it's like an actual natural disaster, which is what they sort of compare him to in most of these.
Yeah.
Rather than this, it's like
Godzilla
is like a full-on assault.
But like that's where the story kind of starts to fall apart. Because they blame it all on Godzilla, but then we have these other monsters.
Right, you see all the other monsters, and it's like, yeah, Godzilla's just a very small part of this, and there are a bunch of other... King Ghidorah, I don't know if he was ever mentioned in this.
No.
You have King Caesar, you have Anguirus, you have Megalon, you got...
Space Godzilla. You could, like, sit...
Oh, they briefly, I think you see Hedorah, or maybe it was Destroya. I think it was Hedorah, though.
There's so many.
There's it's a shit ton of monsters, but they focus almost exclusively on Godzilla, which kind of makes me wonder why they even bothered showing the other monsters at the beginning, because it's like, I mean, Godzilla, he's basically it.
Yeah.
I mean, when you come down to it, he's the be-all, end-all. He's the king of the monsters.
Yes.
And for good reason. So, it really kind of wonders why they bother with the other monster silhouettes, because you never see him again.
No.
And you spend probably a good, I'd say almost 2/3 of the movie in space with this group of people.
That's actually a good estimate, because I watched an hour,
right.
And then I watched the last 30 minutes. They head to Earth at roughly like 50 minutes into
right.
this.
They've been in space for a while, which they sort of go halfway in between explaining how their space works.
Yeah, so that's where
that kind of made me a little cranky, because I like hearing about stuff like that.
Well, that's kind of where my problems come in. So they escape Earth,
okay.
But also it mentions that these aliens show up that had something similar happen to their planet. So half the people in space are these aliens.
Well,
with them.
If I'm not mistaken, didn't they say like something happened to their sun and like a black hole got created in the center of the galaxy and it sucked everything in?
something. Well,
I think
like they
that was
said,
what
there
it
was
was.
monsters too.
Yeah, but
And then they're like,
they kind of bounce around as to what the fuck's going
yeah,
on.
and then they're like, we'll help you destroy Godzilla, and then that's when they like show Mechagodzilla for like 10 seconds, and then
he's under construction. He's about to be built.
I guess the base got attacked or something. Yeah. And then they all leave Earth, and then there's this massive thing about like time jumps and things like that.
That revolves around the theory of relativity, which they never quite say how far they've gone. So you never quite get a good scale on how far they've happened, or if they've been like running light speed this entire time.
They never really explain that, and then
they say they've been traveling shipwise for 11 years.
Yeah,
but they've gone like several thousand light years at this point,
looking for planets and like other inhabitable Earths.
Right.
So then,
but they get out there and then they come back, and by the time they've come back, it's been like 20,000 years. They said
a large amount of time.
So,
which
by this estimation, they've spent about 10,000 years out in space looking for a new place, effectively traveling at light speed, the speed of light, fastest you can go.
Yes,
I'll give them that. But the math doesn't quite add up there.
No.
And then they say, well, I guess we're going to turn around, and if we crank the engines up to 170%, we can be back there like that. But it's going to be another 10,000 years. It's going to be another.
And they overshoot, like, the time is, like, much longer than they think.
They say something about opening a wormhole. And so I'm like, are you time traveling or are you wormholing? Because those are two. Or are you light speed or are you wormholing? Because those are two very, very different fields of physics and relativity. It's hugely different.
And sci-fi nerds like that.
I'm a huge stickler for crap like this. If it doesn't play a huge proponent of it, like Back to the Future.
No, yeah.
They just say, I made a time machine. And they don't explain how the time machine works. It's like, I have to achieve X amount of forward momentum to engage this drive. I'm not going to tell you how this drive works. Yeah, just know I have to achieve X in order to time travel. Or the hyperdrive in Star Wars.
Yeah.
It's a device. I travel very, very fast.
Yeah, but
that is all you need to know.
Exactly.
Star Trek's.
That gets complicated.
Star Trek gets complicated, but they actually go into being complicated sometimes, to where you could be like, yeah, okay, I'll buy it, whatever.
Yep.
And then the other 98% of the time, it's just science techno jargon, babble.
This is the first Godzilla one to deal with time travel, though. Godzilla's never really
that's
been
kind
a
of the thing.
time travel thing.
They don't say it's time travel, though. They entirely say it's we've got to go through hyper light space, but then they say wormhole is generating, and it's like.
And then they end up like thousands of years.
Yeah. Long story short, they end up 20,000 years beyond when humanity left. Which there's actually another statistic in here that I really kind of laughed at, but for entirely different reasons. They say they're going back and they have to repopulate the planet. And
then we get multiple...
Well, hold on, because I have problems here, because they say they have 4,000 beings, 4,000 inhabitants across 3 different races.
Yes.
Now...
What's the third race?
I have no idea. I'm presuming a hybrid of human and whatever this alien is.
I guess
that's my best guess. I don't really know, because
the aliens are superhuman looking, and
yeah. So basically, it's like, what's the point of even having them be aliens? But
because aliens happened in Godzilla, and it's just probably a reference for nerds. But
well, there have been
one of the super forgettable races.
Well, there was one race that introduced Mechagodzilla, so he was from Planet X, and they came.
That's probably why.
Maybe I don't know, but long story short,
forgive
me if I have this statistic wrong, but I seem to remember reading somewhere that a viable human population would require close to 20,000 people in order for complete and total survivability rate. And that would be like exactly 10,000 down male and female sides, and they all have to be of breeding age and capability. Like, that number might have been lowered or tweaked at some point. I don't know, and forgive me if that is wrong. I want to say I read that statistic somewhere like 5 years ago. I don't know, but
I know how far apart. I know a girl who like has a degree. I know how far apart genetically you have to be to not get inbred.
Yes, well, that's kind of what I'm talking about. You
It's
have to have so many people between you
fifth
and your
cousins.
Yeah,
You can breed with your fifth cousin.
Point is, when they say they've only got 4,000 people between 3 different races, I'm just like, that is not nearly enough. I mean, even if you do get back to Earth, you're wholesale fucked for breeding, because there's no way you're going to have enough genetic material to spread around. Provided my statistic is right. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
Or you will have to be very meticulous in a lot of arranged marriages.
That, or start making some banjos and shotguns.
Yeah.
Cousin Eddie's got the moonshine from the moon. Anyway.
They even talk about, like, colonizing the moon. It's like, do that!
Yeah,
If that works.
If that's an option, why didn't you just go to the moon? I mean, it's a much shorter trip. You can bring supplies back, and you can monitor and say, well, we've lived on the moon for a while. I know it's not the same. Mars is out there. I know it's not the same, but it's like an 8-month trip.
Not with these speeds and stuff. And
no, apparently you can just be like there, and it's like, well, why'd you even bother?
Yeah, it's like, why didn't you set up like other I think we'll probably get that in 2 or 3.
Hopefully,
like other colonies broke off and set up shop other places and grew and expanded.
Maybe.
And
well, they do discover. Well, somebody has discovered that there is a group of people at the very end.
I might need to go back. I think.
Okay. Well, I'll leave the very end alone. But it's hinted that humanity has survived somehow.
Okay.
So we're not quite sure what that is about. But overall, the story is we leave Earth and we come back. And it's been 20,000 years, and monsters run the planet, essentially.
Yeah, and I want to know, though, like, why, if there is, like, one baby Godzilla, basically, if there's one baby Godzilla, there's gonna be more.
Potentially.
This is called Planet of Monsters.
Well, potentially.
You don't even know if the Godzilla that showed up
problem.
At the end
This is the big problem, is that
Godzilla.
they want to try and apply some kind of rules to Godzilla, but then they don't want to apply rules in other scenarios. Because they even openly admit, it's like, Godzilla violates all the natural laws of known genetics and physics, and I'm just like, why? So basically, he's an ex machina whenever you need something. It's like, oh, Godzilla can do X. Godzilla can regenerate his limbs super fast. He has an electromagnetic shield that keeps bullets from hurting him.
See, we've gotten different versions of Godzilla in the multiple expanded universes, but most Godzilla power sets, everything Godzilla-wise, there has been eras, and it is set up and stopped. And it's like, Godzilla, this version of Godzilla could do this. They added powers when they needed to, but this is the movie where it stops, and this is where new Godzilla power sets start.
Right.
And it's like, this is one that it's like...
Well, even just judging it without that, I looked at this and I was just like...
being able to have multiple Godzillas because of the time skip,
right.
And, you know, you could have this not be that Godzilla, but be... Like, in the end, we might get a horrible monster hybrid of Godzilla and all the other ones, because he's evolved over time. Maybe
he just ate them and pooped them out later, and the hybrid crawls up. Kill me.
Something like we may get that. Like I don't know, but it's like,
or better yet, we get mutated humans who have been living close to Godzilla underground for so long, and we have like the scene from Total Recall, and we have the mutants underground. If we have a three-breasted horror in this,
I have theories.
I will be surprised.
I have theories for every Godzilla multiverse thing that's about to happen.
I honestly
so.
don't care about multiverse. I say, I care about this Godzilla and what he is about, and we're never given a clear definition of like what Godzilla is about. Like usually, he comes out and he'll like eat radioactivity because he's just a dumb beast that is trying to keep going because that's like the single base drive for all animals. That usually tends to be his modus operandi, or he comes out to fight monster X, Y, or Z.
Yeah, it depends on which Godzilla era as to how. Godzilla movies are very weird about.
Well, Godzilla was originally made as like
Godzilla.
Well, Godzilla was initially made as a statement against nuclear warfare.
Yes.
And atomic bombs and the like. Which, if you've never seen the original Gojira, I highly recommend you watch it.
I have, but
it's a great movie.
Yes.
You out there too. But from there, he kind of metamorphosed into this giant monster-fighting monster. And
Godzilla has always... It depends on which era you're in and which movies you're in, because there are some where he is portrayed as the bad guy, and then there are others where he is monster fighting monster because he is the good guy.
Yes. Most of those came from the 60s.
Yes.
We'll say.
There are different era runs, and that is where you get those eras in that particular Godzilla universe. There are like four
but in
or
each
five.
of those, no matter what, in each of those, it kind of just gave explanations like Godzilla does this.
Yes,
we're not going to explain. And in this, they
good Godzilla, bad Godzilla, middle ground Godzilla. You're not sure.
My big problem in this is they try and go in and sort of explain the science of Godzilla,
which you can't.
But then at the same time, they're like, we can't explain it, and he just does this, and it's like, why even bother explaining it then? Just have him do it. Or just have him be extra super tough.
Yeah, I mean, but with this one, like,
it feels like an overcomplication, is all I'm saying.
This one, it feels like they're trying to fan service and then be original. Like, the second one, I am terribly I think they're going to sit there and just dump a bunch of monsters in it just to show us these monsters, but then try to make it about Godzilla. And then the third one,
I don't know. I mean, Final Wars did that.
Well, no, Final Wars did.
Final Wars had a good 5 or 6 monsters unleashed, and Godzilla just came in and just cleared the board.
I know it wasn't just him because his kids were in it too.
Right. But
I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, but again, you just have Godzilla show up and do his thing.
Yeah.
No, in this, probably my biggest problem comes down to the characters. In that, in other Godzilla movies, you're with the characters, and they're kind of likable, everyday people, and you can kind of understand why they're trying to stop Godzilla, or at least understand him, and there's a greater danger going on. With this, there's nobody actively trying to understand Godzilla. There's a council of people that is just kind of like, nope, stay the course. We're flying through space. We're gonna find somewhere.
Not. I disagree with that statement.
It's heavily implied. It's heavily implied.
Well, like you said, there's no one really studying it. Your main protagonist.
I'm so glad you had to put that in quotes there.
Like, he has massively, like, Godzilla is his
but you never
obsession.
But you never see anybody studying Godzilla. They just know it.
The alien guy, kind of.
Does he really? I mean,
I
he
think
publishes
his
a paper,
people studied Godzilla.
but you don't get a sense of when they might have done this, because, like, at the end, he looks at Godzilla as he's rising out of the ground, and it's like, there you are, the king of monsters. Truly, your reign will last. And it's like, are you evil, or...
I think, like, he just realized that, like, after so long of studying Godzilla and thinking he found a way to beat it, and they killed the kid, but real Godzilla shows up, or maybe real Godzilla, we don't know.
Yeah, we don't have a clue.
He's like, well, we're fucked. So
It didn't really
I'm gonna
sound
give
like
a
that.
really weird speech.
Well, he kind of gives a speech like he's reverent of Godzilla, like this is something he's been looking forward to.
like a cult of Godzilla.
Yeah, something like that. Except there's not been any lead up to that.
That's probably where this other group of people is going to be involved. Maybe.
Maybe. But again, you don't really know of anybody's.
We're going to get hybrid mutant regular people. That's my guess.
That might be cool.
We're going to get monster people, and one of them is going to be Jet Jaguar.
That's such an awful idea. I want to see it.
Because I just
that is so so ludicrously bad. I hope it happens now.
I have Jet Jaguar theories for every active Godzilla universe right now.
I bet you do.
Oh, dude, MonsterVerse, Jet Jaguar is going to be a superhero, and he is either going to have the power to transform or, like, is going to have a mecha. With MonsterVerse Godzilla, like the King Kong American.
If they make it like a Gundam or a mobile suit, I'm so down for that.
It's going to be like your Pacific Rim mecha. That's
Jet Jaguar. Have like one guy in like a cockpit located in the chest or whatever.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm down for it.
Yep. That's going to be
provided. There's a slew of problems I have with that, but I'll get into that when we talk about mecha. For now, we're talking about Godzilla, specifically the animated Godzilla that was produced on Netflix, and we're talking about the characters. I'm sorry, I had to bring myself back around. But it basically centers...
I love Jet Jaguar, it's weird, okay?
You basically get two centers of main characters.
Yeah.
It wants to try and have other characters, but I don't know who any of them are.
You have...
I mean...
The girl...
For a full 30 minutes of watching this, I literally thought two characters were one character. And it was just time-lapsing between two different locations.
Yeah, because they look... The guys with the beard.
Yes! The guy on the jet bike and the guy in the command center.
Yes,
and they both look almost exactly alike in their character animation.
I caught that. I was like, oh shit,
and they
that's
sound
two
alike.
different... Yeah. I'm like, oh shit.
It took me way too long to realize that they were two separate entities. Entirely because I did not care about them, because I didn't know who they were.
Yes.
One person sacrifices himself, which is supposed to be like an old friend of our lead protagonist.
He's there for like 10 seconds, though. I don't know anything about him.
And he's kind of just a shithole. But he's less of a shithole than our main character.
I don't know why the main character was in handcuffs the entire time, because it's like...
Because he tried to blow up.
Well, no, it's like, he's pardoned and he's out on bail, and it's like, okay, first of all, I don't think there would be a bail or money system in a ship like this.
We had to pay 50 whole schmeckles for him.
because just like, in general, they talk about rations and shit like this. There's no way there is a active money system in this society.
That kind of comes back to something that I liked about this, was having been out there this long with no actual means of getting new supplies, it means that you would have to start rationing things out, and so having to use that as like a barter system, which they sort of hint at for people trading stuff, and I'm like, okay, I really like this idea. But then they don't do anything with it. But anyway,
But then this guy's in like cuffs until like he gets out of cuffs.
Let's talk about that, because it involves our main character's introduction, which immediately set off my shithead alert.
Yes, because he's like in a ship being arrested, like beginning of the movie, and like does this big speech about how they are murdering the elderly, which is completely what happened. But
well, it's left ambiguous as to what happened. Which
he basically exposed government corruption.
He accuses the government of setting people adrift in space and then destroying them. But then the old people come in and they're like, "Look,
we don't care.
We don't give a shit. We've been in space for 10 fucking years. I'm going to go down to the planet and take my helmet off and die, alright? It's better than dying alone in a cold steel room."
Basically. And
but
then their ship blows up.
Then their ship blows up about an eighth of the way down.
And it's like, I did it on purpose.
Which it's never quite revealed whether or not it actually is. Like, one person brings it up once at the council meeting or whatever. You know, like, the ship accident was awful. And it's just like, yes, it was unfortunate. And I'm just like, kind of pointless. I mean, if it was genuinely an accident, you could have spent a little more time on there to kind of assuage this idea that the government is corrupt. But as it is, you just said one thing about it, and it's just like, well, you're probably corrupt. I mean, if they had said, like, well, we're going to have to set up a time for grieving and mourning and a remembrance thing, to be like, yeah, that was kind of a really fucked up thing that happened, and then been like, okay, so it's just paranoia that's taking over for this poor guy.
Well, we don't know how long he's been incarcerated either.
Well, presumably not very long until he decided to try and blow up the ship. But having this isolated mentality almost, he's basically a generation removed because he lived a very small part of his life on Earth, but he still knows of Earth, versus the people who grew up on Earth and had to leave. And now the older generation understands why they left. He sort of understands why they left, but he has that yearning to go back and be free on it, but being trapped and confined in this little bitty space. And then you have the new generation that's coming up that is only known this small space.
We never see any characters like that
exactly.
Because they're only in space for 10 years.
Exactly. Well, we would say only 10 years. It's only... They don't deal with any of that.
No.
Basically saying, should we go back? No, we shouldn't. Yes, we should. No, we shouldn't. And that's like almost an hour's worth of your movie.
Yes.
And the rest, that's the vast majority of it. The rest of it is padded out in between.
And then that, like, the last 30
sort
minutes,
of understanding of Godzilla. Like, they tell you some of his powers. It's like he has atomic breath, he's super strong, he's super resilient, and he has a shield.
And they start dumping characters on you that you think you're supposed to. Like, the people we thought were one guy, and it's two different guys.
Yeah.
And then they dump the girl on you. And
I don't even know her name. I know no one's name in this.
There's the girl, the main good guy, the main character.
He's almost... I thought about this. The best way I can describe him, he's the reverse Shinji from Evangelion. Where Shinji was obnoxious and awful because he was this giant lump of shit that just sat there. This character is an avalanche of diarrhea that just shits on everything, but actively goes out of his way to shit it. Because he's super, super aggressive about everything to do with Godzilla. He's like, we have to go back, we have to do it! And it's like, okay, calm down. I understand you want to go back home and you want humanity to thrive. Believe me, we get that.
They even say, like, they get it and they know, like, that people are not going to be happy when they tell them, hey, we have to run, like, for our fucking lives because...
Yes. But this is the character who's
like, they stop running
we have to fight! We have to fight and cut! And it's like, okay, I get that you...
Even, like, suicide missions...
Yeah.
And then lives somehow.
Because I'm like,
somebody else saves his ass.
I really get that you want to stand up and fight for your home. I do. I think that's very admirable. The way you go about it would be to throw everything at the wall and then curse the wall for standing when essentially you're throwing eggs at it.
Yes.
And he just keeps on going and keeps on going. It's just like... to the point where you're just like, you're not even a real character anymore, you're a caricature. Like, no one would follow this person. Like, anybody with any military background.
That's when he became, like, the leader. I was like, nope.
Yeah, anybody with any military background would look at this and go, this guy's fucked in the head. I mean, he's literally saying we throw ourselves at it until either it dies or we die. But you don't really get a good sense that he...
Like, even the government knew they were sending, like, 600 people basically on a suicide mission. But
yes.
They needed the intel anyway.
Yeah.
So...
Well, that's why you send the suicidal guy.
Yeah.
So I was kind of okay with that. The problem is he then demands that everyone else does it, and everybody else is like, yes, you are right, sir! Well, and it's like, half of you don't even know this asshole, probably. He's called Captain, but we never actually see him captain anything, so we don't know if
he was stripped of his military rank when he tried to blow up the ship.
Right, but we never see him being captain-y with people, so we don't know if he's actually good about it, or if he just kind of did it and then went nuts, or what. So there's no real connection with this character, and that's really what's lacking.
That's probably why they set it up as a trilogy, and we will probably get more backstory in the second and third one.
Maybe, but you spent an hour and a half presenting me with a character I don't care about, effectively now being the only person left of the group that went after it.
There was like him and I think maybe 3 or 4 other. Because
I think the girl made it out.
You send
the priest, maybe.
I think like you send this group of people, and then like you effectively just kill them off because there's the monster.
They're effectively cannon fodder, but they don't do anything creative with it. They just blow up.
Well, what they do to like kind of, I guess, give everything and explain that there are other monsters is the first thing that happens is like 2 or 3 of the groups are attacked and their ships are shut off, so there's no way they're getting off Earth.
Right.
And then you have, like, so they all try to meet up, and then they're like, oh, Godzilla's here. Let's gather intel, and another chunk of them die while they're gathering intel and trying to figure out how to kill it. And then the biggest portion of them die after they successfully gather all this intel and then go after Godzilla and kill it, but it's not really Godzilla. It was baby Godzilla, and Godzilla shows up and effectively murders the rest of them, minus roughly 4 characters. And in this time, we have had 3 military changes of power because there are the actual leaders that all, like, die, and then they kind of regroup and follow the leftover leaders, and then they all follow this asshole who is now effectively made the active leader because the only other guy left is not a fighter and is the weird priest guy,
who may or may not be a Godzilla worshiper. We're not sure.
Exactly, and he's like, this guy hates Godzilla so much, we should follow him because he is probably the only person who is obsessed and made a plan, which is completely correct because the rest of them do not know their ass from a hole in the ground and have no clue what the fuck they are doing.
You just hit the other problem for me was with the other characters as well. I'm okay with not having a likable protagonist. At least make them competent, and like nobody knows what the fuck they're doing.
No, they're on the ground to figure out why things don't work and they can't get a signal to shit in space.
Right.
Which they ass explain.
Well, that's kind of the other... That's harkens back to one of my earlier points.
Now you have, like, the ship up there that's like...
They just sort of explain. They don't...
like, the people on the ship, like, may or may not have gotten a signal, and they're like, what do we do now? Do we go to the moon? We fly around again? Like, maybe this guy will contact us, and I mean, at some point we're gonna get to building Mechagodzilla again, and them trying to.
Well, what they're probably gonna do is they're gonna find Mechagodzilla because
it's been 20,000 years. That motherfucker's rusted.
Maybe, but they can repair it
or fossilize. Or no, we have fossilized Earth and structures because it's been so long, and then Godzilla's weird shit has fossilized the entire planet because now plants are swords. Don't forget about that.
Yeah, I didn't make any goddamn sense either. Now, it just feels like a lot of this is over-explained.
I think we've talked about as long as we've watched this movie because there's just so much weird goddamn shit that goes on.
Well, there's a lot of
this
stuff
thing.
in here that you could completely and totally strip out. The time difference, strip it out. Just make it like 200 years.
Not even. You don't. You can.
No, I would say give it a little bit of time. I'd say about 150, 200 years.
Well,
that will give it some leeway between when you can have the monsters overrun, you could have a lot of the destruction of the cities and stuff, a lot of vegetation and shit returning back into creeping into what was civilization, and that would give you a decent comparing contrast between those two.
Plus, you would also have, like, the possibility... I'm sorry, I'm yawning. You would still have, like, the different groups of humanity that are left. Instead of, a bunch of us took off on a ship. We have no idea if any other humans survived. We're guessing not.
Yes. You could very easily just have it be like they've been situated on, like, a space station or whatever, and they've been sending out deep-range transmitters that... use a very super sophisticated means of communication, and they like ping things back almost instantaneously across great distances. And you could say, we haven't found anything for our deep range probing. We got to go back to Earth.
See, what you would only have to explain then is like a 200-year gap and maybe like a wormhole or something.
I wouldn't even say you need a wormhole.
Well, I would just want... Like, I do like the idea of a character who was young and remembers this thing and remembers Earth and is horrified. Like, I like the idea of him being obsessed with taking Godzilla down.
Effectively, what you would need is you would need a...
he's too goddamn over the top.
Right. You would need, like, a blue gender scenario where, like, the character was placed in cryogenic suspension or whatever, and, like, he's... grown up knowing this, but he still wants to go back now that he's seeing how everything is falling apart, and he's trying to rally everybody together.
Maybe like have the hyper speed thing kind of do what it did, but not be so long.
Right. The time difference really doesn't make any goddamn sense.
No.
The whole scenario on Earth didn't make a whole lot of sense.
No.
But they could still... If they shorten the time span, I feel they could use a lot of the stuff around them still, and that would kind of give them, but it would still give them a bit of an edge by saying they've been gone for so long, so some stuff doesn't work.
And then, like, they could still give us a sense of, like, you know, I mean, Godzilla is not going to survive that fucking long. I don't care what version of Godzilla it is. It is a living
it's really
being.
unrealistic.
It will die.
It's really unrealistic, and we wouldn't have to introduce this secondary mountain-sized Godzilla. Like, you could lure Godzilla into an active volcano or whatever, and you could set off the charges and just be like, alright, we're going to detonate and we're going to bury him in the volcano. Done and done. No. And after he's, like, exploded or whatever, because it's, like, a volcano, nothing can fucking survive in there, and that's wiped out, great. We'll set down, we'll start repopulation, we'll start recolonization options, try and sift through the rubble of what it was our home at some point. Yeah. And you could then have the idea of possibly more human tribes, of people who got left behind, and then small little bands of civilization that have eked out
and then,
life
like,
in this area.
Your other, like, oh, that was, you know, a spawn of Godzilla that wasn't Godzilla. Godzilla is on the, like, couple thousand...
Other side of the planet.
Yeah.
Like, you have, like, 5 months or whatever to plan and prepare for another Godzilla.
I think that was the plot of a Godzilla movie.
That sounds like it was.
Yeah, because Baby grew up or like Godzilla was about... It's like one of them, Godzilla was exploding, but then Baby had grown up and become another Godzilla. It was one of those ones. And like Baby actually replaced Godzilla and became the Godzilla for the rest of the movies. That was like 90s. I think.
I want to say that was Godzilla versus Destroyer.
That was like the 90s era Godzillas.
Yeah, it was when they tried to make Godzilla a little darker and edgier, and some of it succeeded and some of it didn't.
But they had weird shit like Baby.
But this would give you a chance to play with the idea that you've gone through enough time to where certain monsters could have grown up or mutated, and like Godzilla has constantly been fighting with the other monsters to try and like keep the fact that he's the king of the monsters, but at the same time they still can exist, and so that would give you a lot more leeway to play with the others. At 20,000 years, it's just Godzilla is like the absolute apex predator.
Yes,
the be all end all for that. And so if you have him just out the gate like that, if you give him enough time, he would effectively wipe out all life on Earth.
Yeah, he wouldn't let other creatures live unless
it's very unlikely.
Unless these are somehow all spawns of Godzilla, which would mean your entire population of animals, creatures, anything, are going to be some weird, like, they're giving us, like, kind of like bird-like dragons that are, like, still look like him, so it's like, that's...
Sort of.
You can't explain that far of a degrade of, like, mutation all coming from one thing.
Maybe those are the ones that have the banjos and the moonshine of the Godzilla Kingdom.
Like, for real, like, you would, for real, just have to have Godzilla, like, that would make his skin, like, reproductive and, like, mutate shit. It'd just be... There's so much that they're going to have to explain that there's no way they're going to and make it sound good.
Well, that's kind of my fear at this point, is they've already botched up the character that I'm sure is the only one left, because I think Super Giant Godzilla wiped out everybody else on the transport ships. So
we still have all the people in space.
Right, but I don't think they're going to come down and take us another stab at this. They're like, there's a giant Godzilla. We ran away from a littler Godzilla. There's no way in hell we're going to do this again. Not against one that's the size of a goddamn mountain.
That's where your other tribes of people or something are going to come in. I don't
Something's going to... But like I say, they botched Godzilla being fun.
Keep talking. I just need to check.
They botched the characters. They botched Godzilla being fun, and they botched any sort of. I hate to use the term realism for Godzilla, and apply that because we're talking about a giant effing radioactive lizard that stomps his giant ass into Tokyo.
Yeah.
But there's no believability. Let's say that. It's broken my suspension of disbelief. That all of this...
I wouldn't be surprised if, like, a wormhole opened up and, like, Gypsy Changer just showed up and started cutting shit in half.
The Legacy Megazord falls out and the Power Rangers attack. Not even Jew Ranger, but Saban's Mighty Morphin Power Rangers.
I'm down. Whatever. Like, it'd be better than what we're given.
Sort of. So
then another wormhole opens up and Jet Jaguar from the 60s flies the fuck in.
Then another one opens up and the bad guy, that Tim Curry voiced from one of those. I don't even remember what it was called. I just remember Tim Curry being the bad guy. And sitting there like as like an 11-year-old that was starting to get out of Power Rangers and stuff, and I'm just like, if it wasn't for Tim Curry, I wouldn't be watching this.
Oh wait, and then another portal open up in 95, like the 90s movie Godzilla, the cartoon one that spawned off will pop up. And then another portal in the 60s cartoon Godzilla will show up, and they'll all just have a big Godzilla fight.
Somebody in the background hits both theme musics at the same time, and they have a rap battle between the two of them.
Yes!
I'm down. So, final thoughts on Godzilla, the animated series on Netflix.
Meh. Dumb.
Give it a pass.
I mean, if you really like Godzilla, there's some cool references, but mostly the cool references are in there for the people that really like Godzilla, so...
Right, which, unfortunately, this kind of alienates by being shitty.
Yes, like, I know I may skip the second, but I'm gonna watch the third one because I want to see Mecha Godzilla, but...
I don't know.
Nah.
Like, as a Godzilla fan, I really don't have any impetus to watch the other two because I don't care about anybody. And there's only so many times you can have Godzilla blow something up be interesting.
True.
It's the Michael Bay effect. There's only so many times you can say, explosion!
Yep.
And that be the thing that excites me. So, I would probably say, watch if you're interested. Just be prepared to be doing other things, and maybe rewind when stuff happens and you come back and you may have missed some of it.
That's exactly what I'm going to have to.
So,
alright guys, well let us know what you thought.
if you'd like us to continue this...
I guess this kind of turned into our anime night, because you never watched Sword Art Online.
Yeah, I totally watched that thing.
No, you haven't.
You can't prove it.
I can. Explain the ordinal scale to me.
It's a giant scale that
And you
measures the ordinal.
You are wrong.
It's a video game. I can make it like that.
Alright, guys. Well, until next time, we will see you guys later.
It measures it in ords.
It's not that.
It measures your nail in ords.
Later, guys.